Hello, this is Catherine Dubberly, the Answer Lady. I'm a big fan of KISS looms, and I am cooperating with Kelly at KISS to present to you a whole series of looming techniques especially for KISS. We're going to do this on all sorts of KISS looms, so you get to see every basic technique on your own loom. Welcome and enjoy. Let's do a little bit of plain old knitting on this FG1 KISS loom. This is a very fine gauge loom using number 1 yarn. The normal knit stitch for a KISS loom is the U-wrap stitch. It's a true knit stitch, totally indistinguishable from any other way that you might choose to get the knit stitch. But this loom is built with this particular stitch in mind, and it's very easy to do. My personal preference is to knit off the last stitch wrapped first. That anchors the whole row, and now at my leisure I can knit these over. Bottom loop goes over top loop. Be careful that it does go all the way over the peg, and especially on this fine gauge loom, do not lean it to the side and accidentally catch the pin. Doing so would make a snarl. It'll grab the knitting, you won't notice it, and in a few rows it'll get hard to knit and also hard to release the loop that you have caught. So just avoid it. Always knit over the entire peg, but don't include a pin. 1 row knitted. You have the choice of slipping the very first stitch, which means don't wrap it, don't knit it, just go on to the next one, or knitting it. If it's going to show, such as the edge of a scarf, in general it makes a nicer, neater edge to slip it. If it's going to be seamed together with another piece, such as the front of a sweater, I go the other direction. The seaming works better if you do knit it. So it's situational which you tend to choose. Also, our personal styles and preferences just vary. I find it helpful on most of my looms, but especially the finer gauges, to keep my stitches somewhat near the top of the pegs, not so near they fall off. But you can imagine if they were down there, how on earth would I get this lifted up and over? It just won't go. So every now and then I push them down, but my working space tends to be higher up. I knitted the first stitch last row, but we'll pretend we're slipping it this time. Behind the peg, no, behind the pin, in front of the peg. Behind the pin, in front of the peg. Simulating the letter U for each stitch. That's why it's called the U stitch. I let the fingers of the hand that's not wrapping follow to keep the wraps secure without having to make them too tight. I knit the last stitch over. That doesn't work for everybody, and that's okay, but for me it allows me freedom of movement. Some people find that they would rather work 1 stitch at a time, so next row we'll do that. I find the continuous U stitch, which is what we're doing, to be very fast and even. Now let's do it stitch by stitch. We're going to slip this one, meaning don't wrap, don't knit, behind the pin, around the peg, making the letter U, and I'm holding the yarn gently in back with my fingers while I knit over, using the tool in the other hand. Behind the pin, around the peg, slide the tool into the groove that's made by the shape of the pin. Looking down there, I'm sliding into that groove. Very easy to get access. U wrap, knit over. U wrap, knit over. U wrap, knit over. U wrap, knit over. The secret of even knitting is getting the same amount of tension in every wrap so that the same amount of yarn forms the stitch, and then flipping over, hooking over, with the same amount of pressure and pull every time. If I alternately make very little movements like this one, with larger, more aggressive movements like this one, my stitches will be different sizes. On the other hand, if I try very hard to keep them all just alike, which I'll try for the next view, they will come out much more even, and the evenness is a real possibility. It's an extra nice thing about Kiss looms. The presence of those pins may look confusing at first, but it's helping you get the same amount of yarn into every stitch, and then you learn to control your hand so that you don't accidentally give one stitch extra yarn by giving it an extra hard pull. And you're going to be surprised at something. Even though we've been doing this very slowly while we chatted, we already have a decent piece of knitting. Small as it is, the work can go pretty fast.